All right. Nice to linger on that song for a little bit. I don't think I realized when that was out how good it was. That was just the cranberries. Okay. Uh, we're that the song is always chosen with some intention, and we are going to be talking about lingering today. We're going to be talking today mostly just about one verb. Um, one very unusual, very special verb in in the Torah, and and that appears um, for the last time in this week's Parsha in the Torah. It's a verb that only appears 9 times in all of the Tanakh. It's a very unusual verb, and the verb is lihitmamea. Lihitmamea. Okay, so let's put that aside and we'll come back to it. So just a few good and welfare kind of announcements. Um, first of all, if you are lots of Hadar stuff going on this weekend. If you're in Los Angeles at Temple Beth Am, they every year throw a Shabbat weekend event that is dedicated to song and prayer. It's called Tefillah, it's called, and the featured sort of artist there, Hannah Raskin, is a recording artist under Hadar's recording label, the Rising Song Institute. So that's a connection, and our director of music, Rabbi Deborah Sachs-Mintz, will be there with her. So there'll be some Hadar presence in LA. I actually won't be in LA this weekend. So if you're in San Francisco this weekend, I'm going to be at the Kitchen in San Francisco, teaching several times throughout the weekend with Rabbi Noah Kushner up there, and Chazan Asher, and good people up there. And so if you're in San Francisco, come and learn with me. We'll have a Friday night a short learning, and then a couple of longer sessions on Saturday. Um, this is also an IKAR class. This is in partnership. So let me also note that at Kol Tefillah, Rabbi Ronit Sadok from IKAR will be teaching Friday night. And speaking of IKAR, if you're the random person who comes to these classes but knows nothing about IKAR, which is fine, you should know that these classes were started by an organization that was started by a woman who just put out a new book, The Amen Effect, and so I want to recommend that to you, and to tell you that not this Shabbat, not next Shabbat, but the one after, there'll be a talk with Rabbi Brous at IKAR. And then on January 30th, there's a talk. So if you're not around to that Shabbat, there's a talk at the Central Library in Los Angeles. There, you could go to IKAR's website and find, maybe Vera can even put a link to it, and find other. Maybe you're in New York, or I think Rabbi Brous is right now. So she's touring her book around, and it's very exciting. So congrats to her, and recommended to you all. Okay, I think that's it. Let's get into it. I will just say before we say a blessing and get into it that, I write these weekly Divrei Torah for Hadar, and I remember when I was so a little anxious about teaching and writing, and I said, can I just reuse the material? Can I teach the and I knew I didn't want to teach the same exact material, but I thought that every class would basically be a deep dive into footnote 5 or something like that. But the truth is, I find that most of the time, once I've finished writing the material, I'm kind of like done with that. And then there are other things in the Parsha I want to talk about. So I find myself much more often just doing 2 entirely separate topics, which we will do today. But if you want to take a look at the Devar Torah that I wrote this week, here it is in the chat. And it's all about bread, basically. And I thought maybe we would go even further with bread today. Bread is a huge metaphor in our tradition, right? Bread and anti-bread. But I wrote it all down. So so if you're interested in bread, take a look at that link. Okay, let's talk about litmamea. Let's talk about the verb, and soon we will define it, and then it'll take us on a little tour through the Torah. Let's say a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Just to be able to spend an hour a day learning Torah is such a gift. Okay. Let's take a look. Litmamea. Now, where does it appear? It appears in a very prominent place in the Torah. You might call this the highlight of the Torah, the climax of the Torah. This is the moment that the children of Israel leave Egypt. This is the Exodus. This is it. The book in Hebrew is Shmot, but we say Exodus. We name the book after this moment right here. Here's the Exodus, and you're going to see the verb and a translation, and then we'll play with the translation a little bit. The verb is litmamea, and let me call up the right screen here. Oh, and let me give you a link to the source sheet. Hold on one sec. Okay. Sorry, it's always like, and the HTTPS, otherwise it won't link into, etc., etc., etc. Technical. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, here's the source sheet, and let's get started. The children of Israel, V'yisau b'nei Yisrael, Vayisu b'nei Yisrael mi Ramses Sukkosa. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot. Kshesh meot elef raglei hagvarim levad mitaf. About 600,000 men, fighting men, which is often how they would take a census in the Torah. 600,000 fighting men, meaning probably like well over 1 million, maybe over 2 million people leaving Egypt at once. Okay. Moreover, a mixed multitude went up with them. And this is the Erev Rav. This is a very famous phrase here, the mixed multitude. V'gam Erev Ra alaytam. And a lot of discussion. Who were these people? It seems like other people joined the cause and they, I want to get out of Egypt too. So that's interesting for another time. And Erev Rav went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. And here it is. Okay, this is such an important, this verse is it. This is like, there's so much in here. This is the Exodus. This is the matzah, and this is sort of the reason for the matzah. Okay. Vayafu et habatzek. They baked et habatzek. They baked the dough, asher hotziu mimitzrayim, ugat matzot, that they had taken out of Egypt. They baked it into matzah cakes. Kilo chametz, it had not leavened. Kigorshu mimitzrayim, because they had been driven out of Egypt. That's interesting language, that they had been driven out of Egypt, when the whole thing is that they want to leave. But kigorshu mimitzrayim, and here comes the verb. I'm going to point it to it in Hebrew. V'lo yachlu litmamea. They could not delay. That's how it's translated here. Okay, so now you have a translation. Litmamea, to delay. They could not delay. V'gam seda lo asalahem. And they had not prepared any other provisions for themselves. They hadn't trapped anything. All they had were these matzahs. That's what they left with. And that's why matzahs are matzahs, because they couldn't delay. Right? The other big famous word that we use for that whole atmosphere comes earlier in the chapter, in chapter 12 of Exodus, one of the most important chapters in the Torah. And the other verb is chipazon. Bechipazon. They left in haste. Chipazon. Okay, that's an interesting word. But this is sort of like, and if they hadn't left in haste, what is it that they couldn't do? Litmamea. Litmamea, to delay. Now, what does this mean? Well, it was just translated as delay. The easiest way, if you're on Sefaria, to look up a word is to go click into the text. Thank God for Sefaria. God and Brett Lockspicer. Let's see. Where am I? I sort of lost my place. Okay, here we are. If we just click on the word. There we go. To linger, to tarry, wait, or delay. Okay. So That's the Cranberry song there. To linger, to tarry, to wait, to delay. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, even though it's a very weird, cool looking word. You cannot help but notice, though, that lehit mamea looks like lehit ma. Okay, ma, what does ma mean in Hebrew? Ma means what? So lehit mamea feels a little bit like like they lingered and were lingering in questions, like asking what I want, like they're lingering and asking and not satisfied, like caught up in something. Okay, that's just, it just feels that way. We're going to soon see one of the commentators totally dismiss what I just said. So hold for that. But okay, you now have the verb, and they could not linger. And I guess I just I wonder why, like, before we start making connections to other uses of this verb, what does it mean if this is the opposite of haste, and haste is the experience of leaving Egypt, and haste we talk about all the time, and haste is the reason for the matzot. What's the other thing? What is it to linger that that the Torah takes time to tell us about? Okay, so I don't know, like I'm putting that question in the air. I'm not sure we're ready to answer it yet, but if anyone already has a thought that they want to insert, then that's I'll pause here for just a moment. Sorry, I'm having some computer troubles today. Okay, are we good? Is there any confusion? They couldn't delay. Okay, all right. So let's just read the rest of that, and then we'll start making connections. So they could not delay. And they had not prepared any provisions. Okay, the question I'm asking is a question that's sort of a common interpretive, like common of the interpretive style in Parshanut, which is to say, well, there's so much wording here. What they left, and they were driven out, and the bread didn't have time to rise because they couldn't linger. It's just like saying the same thing over and over again, and with such an unusual verb, you sort of have to ask, well, what are they trying to tell us here? Okay, so that's it. That was the Exodus from Egypt, and the length of the time that the Israelites lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430th year, to the very day, the Etzem Hayom Hazeh, and here's the Exodus, Yatsu Kol Tzivot Hashem Me'eretz Mitzrayim. All the ranks of God departed from the land of Egypt. That's it. That was the Exodus. Okay, now let's have some fun. Lehitmamea. What an unusual verb. How would we think about understanding the use of that verb and what it really means, and why the Torah goes out of its way to tell us about the possibility of being mitmamea right here in this most important moment in our people's history? Okay, so here's what I want to ask. Where else have we seen that verb? Where else have we seen that verb? Oh, I see the hands now are going down. And you're cheating if you're just looking ahead. Does anyone who did not look on further happen to know where that verb is? Okay, all right.
I think there's one occasion when Lot didn't want to leave Sodom and Gomorrah.
Ooh, Ron Fursky for the win. That's awesome.
And I think with Jacob not wanting to leave his homeland, that's being forced to run away.
Oh, okay, that's it. We did it. Okay, great class, everybody. Bye. That was beautiful. That's beautiful. That's right. And look, I'm doing this for fun, but also this is really, you notice these unusual words, keep them in your mind, and hopefully after an hour of talking about it, we'll all be able to, when someone asks, where else have we seen litmamea, you'll know the three places. This is a good kind of memory to develop in the study of Torah. If there are three uses of one verb in the Torah, well, then there's some connection between those three places, if in no other way than semantic, but of course, our working assumption, or mine anyway, is that it's more than that, that there's a kind of tethering that takes place between these three. That's the sort of midrashic assumption. So let's take a look first at the place that Ron mentioned, and then the place that Noah mentioned, and we'll start to get a fuller sense of what it means to be mitmameh. And it turns out to be a very potent, a verb that's only used at moments of great tension, great tension. So let's take a look here. I see, don't usually see the chat, but I just saw that Rena said that it's reflexive. That's good too. That's good too. Right. Okay. Let's talk about. Let's hold that, and we'll come and talk about that again when we think again about the construction of the word as we look at the first time that it is used. Okay. Rena's right. It's unusual in two ways because it repeats that second syllable, which Hebrew sometimes does, but it's a certain style. Okay. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a look. Okay. Here's Lot, the story of Lot. I guess before I throw it on the screen, I should say a little bit about the story of Lot, just in case we need a refresher, which is that Lot is Abraham's nephew. And at a certain point, Lot and Abraham don't get along. And that makes us feel as a reader of the Torah that maybe if Abraham is our forefather, maybe Lot's not supposed to be with us. There's something wrong with Lot. And indeed, there is something wrong with Lot because somehow he ends up, he ends up sleeping with his daughters. They assault him. It's a bad story. There's something wrong with Lot. Something doesn't. He ends up offering his daughters to a crowd of strangers. It's a bad story. Lot is a weird guy, and we've talked about that other times. But I'm alluding to the most horrific things in the Torah, and we're just going to move on from them. But you need them to have a sense of what is so weird about Lot, because Lot is also weird in this moment. Because for all of Lot's difference from Abraham and weirdness, and Abraham still goes and saves Lot when Lot is taken hostage. And we had occasion, unfortunately, to think about Lot's hostage taking in a deep way this year. But Lot is taken hostage. Abraham goes in to save him, and then Lot goes back and is in Sodom, right? With these Sodom and Gomorrah. These words have brimstone and hellfire kind of association. Sodom and Gomorrah. That's where Lot is. But Abraham prays that the cities be saved despite their wickedness, and instead of saving the cities, because it seems like they're too far gone, God, seemingly as a kindness to Abraham, agrees to save, or makes the gesture of saving Lot and Lot's family, and sends two angels to Lot to take him out of Sodom before the city is destroyed. Okay, there's context for you, and that'll help to understand how strange it is when Lot is the next person to be mitmamea, to delay. Let's take a look at the verb again. Boy, what a day, what a day. I'm also having this thing, by the way, where every time I screen share, just because someone usually has the technical, every time I share my screen and then go back, my Zoom screen is small again and I have to make it big again. I don't know why that's happening. Anyway, put it in the chat if you do. Okay, here's the scene in Sodom. As dawn broke, the messengers, and they're really angels, they're not, the messengers can be used to just, the word malachim can be just messengers, but here they have superpowers, so I'm convinced they're angels. The angels urged Lot on, saying, "Up, take your wife and your two remaining daughters, lest you be swept away because of the iniquity of the city." Here it is, vayitmama, vayitmama. There it is. He delayed. Still, he delayed. And I gotta say, this first usage is also, take a look at the trope here. This is also an unusual notation, an unusual tam. It's a shalshelet. A shalshelet, literally like a chain because there's a chain of three sounds, right? So a shalshelet. I'm not a good laner, so that wasn't good. But it's like a trill like that. So Yitmama there, it's like you can feel him delaying. It's a brilliant thing that the Masoretes, is that what they call them, did by placing a shalshelet here. Vayitmama. That's how you. That's the moment. Is he delay? Okay, I'm making too much of it now. I'm just practicing my weak shalshelet. It doesn't come up that often, so you don't practice it often. But anyway, that's the idea, and you can feel in that notation that there's like something holding Lot back. We'll read the rest of it here, and then we'll think about what is he doing? So the angel seized his hand and the hands of his wife and his two daughters in God, with God's mercy upon him. Because the Torah wants to say that he doesn't seem to really deserve this treatment, but bechemlat Hashem alav, because God took mercy upon him and brought him and left him outside the city. Okay, so there's the moment of delay. What is he holding back? What is holding him back? Why is he so torn? Why doesn't he want to go when the whole city is being destroyed? And just so we make that point just to before we open up the conversation more fully, let me just add one more cool detail, which is that someone else delayed in that story, right? Lot's wife, famously in one of the weirdest lines in the Torah, but it's directly connected to what we're talking about here. They brought him outside. They said, flee for your life. Don't look behind you. Don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the hills, lest you be swept away. But Lot said to them, oh, no, my lord, you've been so gracious to your servant and have already shown me so much kindness in order to save my life. But I cannot flee to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't need all of this, blah, blah, blah. So they go and they go and they go. And then the last bit here says, but his wife turned around and looked back. V'tabet ishto me'acharav, v'tehi nitziv melach. And she turned into a pillar of salt. That's like a very well-known image, the pillar of salt. Has anyone been in Israel to the place near the Dead Sea where they say, oh, that's Lot's wife? It's like a pillar. It's a cute thing. But okay, there's that image. She turned into a pillar of salt. Why did she turn into a pillar of salt? Because she delayed on some level, right? That was there's a sort of movement there where he delays and they say, no, don't delay, go and don't look back. She does look back. So it's all kind of connected to this. We don't want to leave Sodom. We're not sure we should leave Sodom. Even with angels in our house, even with a crowd threatening to assault us, even with all of that, Lot delays. Okay, so what's Lot thinking? And as we begin to construct that, we'll eventually head back to the Exodus and try to think what is all of this kind of delay that the Israelites simply could not afford to do. So what is Lot thinking there? What is Lot thinking? Okay, that's it. Well, I'll tell you one thing before we move forward, which is that that verb here again looks like where is it? Here it is. This verb here, as I said, it looks like ma. So, and it is reflexive, as Rena said. So it's a little bit like the translation I would love to give for this verb is equivocate. To equivocate. He sort of, to equivocate, that is to doubt, to go one way or the other. There's something about Lot that was in that moment turning into himself and asking, what do I really want here? That moment of just really trying to figure out, what do I actually want to leave Sodom, or is this my home? And am I with them till the end? This is what I said before. one of our commentators calls a false derivation. Here, I'll just show you that that when he equivocates, the Ibn Ezra, here you can see it in English. I am amazed by Ben Ephraim's commentary. Ben Ephraim is a Karaite biblical commentator. I'm amazed by what the Karaites say, a non-rabbinic tradition. He claims that V'yitmama, but he lingered, is derived from the same root as ma, what? What does it say there? However, he seems to have forgotten that both hays of V'yitmama are pointed. In reality, V'yitmama means lingered, and it comes from a trilateral root, mem hey hey, with the first letter written twice. Okay, so that is just to say that I want to read this as he equivocated, but the Ibn Ezra is saying that is a false derivation. And the question is, does the Torah mean for us to wonder about this word, to linger over this word? Okay, let's return to Lot. What is Lot thinking? I finally have some thoughts on Lot. Leah, let's start with Leah.
Is Lot the first person in the Torah that lives in a house? I'm thinking about Abraham and Sarah, who live in a tent, and everybody is in a tent. And we are going to go from Egypt, where there are structures, where there are houses, into a place where we have no structure, no structures, where we basically have tents. It's nice and comfortable here. Why would I want to leave? I got a roof over my head.
Wow.
And I think the same thing we saw in the late 1930s in Germany. Many German Jews could not believe that the roof that had sheltered them thus far was going to be taken away from them very soon. They couldn't get that this was the moment not to linger.
Okay. Okay. All right. Leah just, I mean, we really could end the class after that because there's a lot there. Leah, first of all, just a brilliant suggestion there. I'm thinking about it. Were there any other fortified houses that we know of before this? A really, really important thought, because our ancestors were told again and again and again, all lived in tents. They were shepherds. They were sort of nomadic people. And even as they were rooted in the land, they were sort of always traveling around it and not rooted in that way. And then, building projects like the Tower of Babel are sort of condemned. So, and Sodom is condemned. Is Sodom condemned because there's something about a city and a fortified, all of the, there's a suspicion that the Torah has of cities and what happens in cities, but the comforts of a city and the safety of a city and the fortified insulated walls that you have when you have a house, we take it for granted because most of us live in houses. But Lot is unusual here. And Lot left Abraham. Lot left a tent life because it was like the conflict between Lot and Abraham was that there wasn't enough for both of them. It was very scarce when they were all trying to herd the same flocks on the same ground. And eventually Lot is not a shepherd anymore. He settles down. So that's fascinating. That's a great, great read. That maybe what Lot is afraid of is, that looks like the city of Sodom has some problems, and God says God's going to destroy it. Okay, I guess I believe in God. But on the other hand, what are you telling me? I'm going to leave the only fortified environs I know and just head out into the hills? I'm not. And he says that. I can't just go running into the hills. I can't do that. Right? He's freaked out by that. So I love that read, Lee. I think that's if I showed up to class just for that, that's brilliant. And then you the connection you make is one that inevitably we're going to think about, although we have to make it delicately. I think there's also the mention of the Holocaust, there is a parallel there of getting comfortable and then suddenly being attached to that, but also like that puts a different spin on it because we tend to, we can't we can't fathom that that's going to happen. We just like can't fathom that an entire society is. So maybe it's actually, maybe that reference gives us some sympathy for Lot. It's like, could it really be that the whole world's going to turn upside down? You know, could it really be that everything I've worked so hard to build is just going to be poop? You know, there are certain kinds of reality bending uh, 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 traumas that are well, how could you possibly think that you had to flee from Germany? How could you? And yet there's here back in our story, there's this idea of like, no, don't delay. Don't delay. So again, part of what we're trying to do here is understand the Exodus. So the Exodus is a moment when they could not delay. And maybe if part of what delaying means is wondering whether you're going to have the comforts and security of your current life, even amidst all the oppression, well, then that maps on very well to the Exodus, because that is what the children of Israel say again and again and again. Is why, you know, why'd you take us out of Egypt? We remember what it was like in Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, you know, when we ate bread to our contentment. That's exactly the kind of thinking that they ultimately do. So this moment, the moment of the Exodus, is a moment when they can't be in that thinking. And maybe for a moment they weren't in that thinking. And what it says is they were not able to be in that thinking. The crisis had gotten so severe, there was no room to say, well, what about, I don't know. I mean, it's like, no, leave now. And that was the moment. Okay, good. So love that reading, Leah. Thank you. Let's turn to Noah.
Yeah, with the Lot instance, also the Jacob and Egypt, they're all moments where it's inherent to the people, the nation's survival, whether it's Lot's family, Jacob having to protect himself, and but each time they're leaving the actual known, what they've had for 430, 70. I don't know how long Lot was in Sodom because it's very, and Gomorrah because it's very unclear on that time frame, but it's uprooting that and going into the known with only a faith. Like, I compare some of them to the Chabad rabbis, that they're going out to a completely area and building up their community from scratch, and that's what they're being asked to do, with no time to reflect, no time to think, is this the best decision? Just go based on faith that it'll turn out good.
Good. Okay, good. Okay, this is great. Noah does something very helpful here for us, which is to string all three of these episodes together under the heading of the borderline between safety and survival. In other words, like a desperate attempt to stay alive, which that's the question. These are life or death moments, all of these moments. Will you survive if you don't leave right now? Right? That's the question. Okay, let's bring Noah's third text in, because that helps make the point, I think, that Noah is making so well, because it is a borderline, as Noah says, between death and life. It's also a borderline, though, between the known and the unknown. So survival is on the other side, but it's also unknown and hard to trust. All three of these situations, and here's the third, just so that we have them all, is that Joseph has become the ruler of Egypt and is in control of all of the grain of Egypt. The whole world is going to Joseph. And Joseph's brothers, have gone down to Egypt. And then they've been manipulated by Joseph, who remembers them. They don't remember him, and eventually manipulated and told that they have to bring their youngest brother with them next time, and he keeps one of them hostage, Shimon. So they're at that point where one of their brothers is in prison in Egypt, and they're out of food, and this is the condition that Joseph has made is they have to bring Benjamin with them. But Jacob, who's already lost one son, Joseph, doesn't want to lose another. Okay, that's the context here. But the famine in the land was severe. V'arav kaved ba'aretz. And when they had eaten up the rations which they had bought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again and procure some food for us." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us, don't let me see your faces unless your brother is with you. If you will let our brother go with us, we'll go down and procure food for you. But if you will not let him go, we will not go down, for that man said to us, don't let me see your faces unless your brother is with you." And Israel said, "Why do you serve me so ill as to tell the man that you had another brother? Why did you tell him that there was..." They replied, "But the man kept asking about us and our family, saying, is your father still living? Have you another brother?" Of course, because it's Joseph, so he wants to know. And we answered him accordingly. How were we to know that he would say, "Bring your brother here"? Then Judah said to his father, "Send the boy in my care and let us be on our way, that we may live and not die, you and we and our children. And I myself will be surety for him. I will put myself on the line for him, and you may hold me responsible. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I shall stand guilty before you forever." Big moment for Judah. And then the last line, "Hilule hitmamanu hiatashavnu ze pamayim." Because if we had not dawdled, this is the way they're translated it here, if we had not delayed, we could have been there back and twice. Had we not hitmamanu, delayed, we could have been back there and twice. Okay, so what Noah says is, and by the way, then Jacob gives in and says, "Okay, fine." And this leads to, the resolution of the story, and it leads to them all going down to Egypt, and it's a moment of life and death, but they do survive, but it changes everything because they finally stop delaying. Okay, so what Noah says is, look at what a delay is. A hitmamea is in the Torah. It's a feeling that one might have at a moment of border crossing between danger and potential survival, but between the comforts of the known and the terror of the unknown. And in that moment, we have seen before lowly men like Lot and great men like Jacob, for different reasons. We've seen them equivocate. We've seen them dawdle. We've seen them linger. We've seen them delay. We've seen them be unsure. What should I do? Okay, so that's a very nice. Now we've gotten to a very deep understanding of what that feeling is of being mitmamea. And let's start to wonder: have you ever been in such a moment? Like, do you know the feeling of being mitmamea? This unusual verb, that feeling of like, to me, that's the only way, but I don't know if I can do it. Okay, good. So I think this is good. We've gotten to a good place. Let's keep going deeper. Stan.
The question is delay such a bad thing? We're always taught to look before we leap. We're always taught to think about something before you make life-changing decisions. We're all faced with that, be it a job, marriage, whatever it is. And we're supposed to think before we leap. So that's one thing. Another thing, it's not an exclusively Jewish issue. People are warned all the time that a hurricane's coming, and they said, "I'm not leaving my house. I'm staying here. I'm going to tough it out. I will survive." And so I think we're dealing with human nature. So the question I suppose I have is it bad to delay? Is it bad to think about something right before you do it? That's my question.
This is great. I mean, Stan asks two really challenging, good, sharp questions, because here it's so quickly, so easily with the Torah's framing to disdain for the lingering. It seems like, oh, they're wrong in every case, and look, it's Egypt. They're right. They're leaving. This is the way you do it. But Stan says, I want to take them in the opposite order, because both interesting questions. But first, I want to consider, if you do decide to stay, maybe there's something courageous and noble about that. I'm going to tough it out. I'm going down with the ship, whether it's like tragic and noble or whether it's heroic and we will survive. Is that interesting that that's not being celebrated here with Lot? Maybe Lot was doing something important and saying, maybe, no, I can't go. I have to stay behind with my. Okay, that's an interesting question that Stan asked. The other question that Stan asked is bigger, so I wanted to say, which is, so interesting that if we are negating the value, at least in these moments, the value of deliberation, careful, thoughtful deliberation. That's interesting, because usually that's a celebrated value. And if in Passover we act with haste and chipazon, that's strange, because isn't there some other value of acting with careful, cautious zihirut, right? Deliberation. This is a great moment to share. I thought, related to all of this, there's a very classic Hasidic teaching. The first teaching in the most widely read book by Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, a 19th century Hasidic thinker. And he says, the first thing he says in his book, which is a book of how to live spiritually, the first thing he talks about is haste. But he says there are moments of haste. I'm thinking of this because of what Stan said. Aren't there moments where we should be cautious and deliberate? And not only is that true in a general way, but as Reb Tzadok HaKohen said, in Passover, eventually we get to a place where we linger over the story and we lean to the side and we marbe lesaper b'yitzias Mitzrayim. We extend there's a lot of lingering in the Passover of the future, even though there was a lot of haste in the Passover of the past. So just as for those of you who like the Hasidic readings here, this is what Stan's comments reminded me of. The beginning of a person's entrance into the service of God must be in haste. That word chipazon. As we find regarding the eating of the first Passover sacrifice in Egypt, it was eaten in a rush. But the Passover of subsequent generations was not eaten in a rush. For when one begins to cut oneself off from all the desires of this world. Okay, he's spiritualizing. What does it mean to leave Egypt? It's to cut yourself off from all the temptations of bread and security and all of the desires of the world. But when one begins the service of God, one must be aware of the moment wherein the desire to serve God awakens. One must rush to that moment and hurry to escape. Maybe then it is possible. And then later, one can go along moderately and slowly, like the laws of the Passover of subsequent years. Okay, b'matinut v'le'at kedin Pesach dorot. That's Reb Tzadok's spin on it. So that's like, I love that framing, and he does a lot of in a very short time. They're putting the Passover we're talking about, the Exodus, it has to be in haste. And he's saying that's a good thing, not just because of the danger of the narrative. Yes, it's true. It makes sense in this case. But also, there's something we're supposed to learn about. There are moments when you can attach yourself to God. You can change your life. You can enter into a covenant. You can break out of all of the things that are holding you back, the desires that you have that you can't let go of. You can break free of all that, but there are moments where you just have to seize you can't equivocate, you can't linger, you can't dawdle. And then there are other moments in life, and Stan, I think, would agree with this, that you should go b'matinut, with balance and slowly and thoughtfully and deliberately. Okay, so these have become sort of two spiritual paradigms, which Reb Tzadok has mapped onto the Passover in Egypt, which was one way, and subsequent Passovers, which are a different psychic spiritual experience. Okay, Matt.
That just actually hits
That's
the
it.
point. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, just hits the point I was starting to think about, because this chapter in the Torah has one of my favorite pieces, which is in the middle of setting up to kill all of the firstborn. God and Moses take a little while to relax and linger on discussing the ceremony on how they're going to celebrate this event that they're in the middle of. But it's layered because this is the hasty Passover, not the one we actually do. So they're lingering over discussing how they are going to celebrate rushing through the escape from Egypt. So it's
Brilliant. Brilliant. All the comments today have just been fire. Brilliant. That is just so, that's such an important observation there. This all happens in the midst of the chapter. I took you to the heart of the chapter where they actually leave Egypt. But what is most of the chapter about? It's about all of the rituals of the Passover that they will not only go through on that night, but all of the rituals of the Passover of future generations. And this is what you're going to say to your kids on that day when they ask you, Mazot, what is all of this? You're going to tell them this. There's a lot of lingering. Not only that, this is making Matt's point even stronger because it's such a good point. Not only that, but let's go back to Exodus chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12 has all of those rituals. Right here, they're leaving Egypt, but before then, they get the months, they get the Passover rituals, like keep watch over the blood on the doorpost. Boy, like if they're in haste, they really have a lot of time for instructions. But more than that, I just want to like highlight the fact that they take the lamb on the 10th of the month, and they watch over the lamb until the 14th of the month. So part of the ritual is for them to like watch over this lamb for 4 days. What kind of haste is that? So there's an irony here that Matt is pointing out that is really remarkable, and for further discussion and processing. But that idea that there must be haste, but there's enough time for haste, after all, is about trying to do a lot of things in a short amount of time. And I think this is where Matt was starting to go. I guess all of those rituals are also necessary. If they're in haste, then they're still doing them for 4 days, but it doesn't feel like haste. So great comments. I want to turn to Ron, who was our bingo winner today, who got the first text. Ron, we'd love to see if we can, but if your camera's not working today, that's fine.
My camera's never working.
Okay.
I know I'm going off the derech here because specifically in the verses that you brought up, in the first verses for the Exodus, it's not delay. And I immediately, although it's a totally different verb, I'm thinking what happened there was what happened with Abraham when he was told to sacrifice Isaac, where he didn't delay, he got up immediately, and it doesn't say he didn't delay, but he got up immediately and started out.
Right.
And I think there's other.
But Yashkem Avram Baboker, he got up early in the morning. Like, right. I'm ready.
Yeah, go do it. And I know there's other occurrences of that kind of thing, but I don't know what verbs are used.
Right.
But I just wanted to point out that although that's the verb that's here, it's in the negative. And
right.
So I found a positive elsewhere.
That's right.
Where the verb wasn't used.
That's right. You're right to point all of that out. We could do a larger kind of survey of the moments of alacrity in the Torah's narrative, because it is a value. I mean, Stan was right that careful deliberation is a value, but Ron is also right that alacrity is a value. Zrizim makdimin lemitzvot. The the energetic are like those who have real alacrity will rush to do the mitzvot, rush to do the mitzvot. That's a virtue zrizut in our tradition. The idea that this idea of, as Reb Tzadok says, that our actions must be in haste, and we see that modeled when Abraham does immediately what God says, or when Noah, for that matter, does immediately what God says. Right? What is and there are these moments where they just do what God says. In fact, one of those moments, let's see if chapter 12 is still on screen here. One of those moments that emphasizes, Ron's looking for other places in the Torah where I'm scrolling now through Exodus chapter 12, and I want to get to a moment. And the Israelites went, this is the Passover offering. Moses told them all of that after everything we read. And it says, V'yelchu v'yasu b'nei Yisrael kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe v'Aaron kenasu. They went and they did what Moses and Aaron said. They did it right away. Okay? That's what there's a moment of feeling like, when you read it, it's not a special verb for it, but you have this feeling like they just did it. Right? So Ron's right. That's an echo we also hear in our tradition, and we're in an interesting place now of beginning to map a kind of spectrum of virtues where both alacrity and deliberation are clearly values, but we have to negotiate what are the moments when. And we don't always know. We don't always know what's coming next. Is this a moment to be careful? Is this the moment to buy a house? Is this the moment to pull my stocks out? Is this the moment to put my stocks in? Whatever. Is this the moment to change everything? I'll try to give some more prosaic examples, so it isn't all life and death. Let's end with Payam and Rani.
I think equivocate's the right word. I think this is such a rarely used word because these are the places where there's just two choices. And that it's, that special verb is just pointing towards, these are the very few examples in the Bible in which you have two clear choices and you just have to choose between the two. It is in time of thinking, but everything else, there's multiple choices. So I think it's just saying there's very rare instances of two choices, and that's why we have this rare verb.
Beautiful. I agree with you, Payam. It's you and me against the Ibn Ezra, because I showed you that piece of commentary by one of our great sages who says no, that's not the real grammar of the word. And you know what? He might be right that on a grammatical level, sure, like maybe it's related to something else. But Payam and I think are saying, or at least I'm adding to what Payam is saying, that there's just no way that the Torah doesn't mean for us to see a verb like litmamea and see the two mas there. What should I do? What should I do? And Payam says so beautifully, that's a binary. What? This or what? This. Which of these choices which of these options do I take? What choice do I make? And to be stuck in that, I don't know. Like, that's I just got to say, I relate to this feeling so deeply. I am such an equivocator. I am so rarely able to just seize the moment and just do something because it's necessary without thinking. I'm like you should see me shopping for a mattress. It's like, oh God, go to like this store and lay down. Is this really come? Like, I'm just the worst at this kind of this moment where you just seize and go and do. But I am comforted somewhat by the language that we started with. I'll just end by taking us back to, which is that it says v'lo yachlu litmamea. They couldn't equivocate, and equivocating can be, at least for me, paralyzing, in part because it's like an indulgence. It's like I'm delaying the inevitable by just staying in the anxiety. But there are moments actually where you don't have the choice, and they couldn't equivocate. And that's part of what the haste. So is it that they were hasty and that was a good thing and that was a virtue? Or is it that the moment sometimes creates haste, and haste is the right response for the moment? And it's not so much a virtue, but a necessity. And there are moments like that. So anyway, great work today, everybody. Thank you so much. I came in today a little uncertain where we were going to go, and I just heard just brilliance across the board. So I really appreciate your thoughts. And great learning with you. Have Shabbat Shalom. Maybe I'll see some of you in San Francisco this weekend. But if not, have Shabbat Shalom wherever you are. Bye.